And for those of you that have been following the return to Rotherhithe journey, you'll remember the Leaning Tower of Rotherhithe. But before we head off towards London's longest street and start that, it's an impromptu one with a church I found, a lovely little church. There's the angel, or the famous angel as Samuel Pepys described it in his diary. And we'll walk down Rotherhithe Street to get to our church. For anyone that's new to the page, I'm not a massively religious person, but I do love old churches. This one here, the construction began in 1902 and it was consecrated and opened by 1903. Full history and historic images, including its first father, will feature at the end of the video. Bear this park in mind as well, because that features at the end of the video with a then and now shot. All around us were once buildings many of which survived the war and were taken down in the 1970s. And here is our church. This building here is the presbytery, or the priest's house. Signs of spring coming with the snowdrops and other bulbs coming through. Presbytery. Received a bit of damage in the wall, this one, so it had to have its roof patched up after the war, and there's a more recent slate roof. And here we are, the Catholic Church of St. Peter and the Guardian Angels. Photographs will follow as well, and you won't get a great image of Jesus on the cross there because of the reflection, but you get a pretty nice view of that from the inside, the window. Not a massively long tour, this one. And you'll now join me inside. And now for our little historical segment on this lovely old church. And I really enjoy the research for these things because it's amazing what you can find. And I do like to put faces to names where possible. The first parish priest of St. Peter and the Guardian Angels Church arrived in the area in 1891. Father Joseph Haynes, who we see here in the centre, and he's with a group of girls on their confirmation day. Father Haynes was temporarily housed at Dock Head around Old Trinity Church, and bear this in mind because when we get to the end of London's longest street, Rotherhithe Street, this lovely old church sadly was destroyed in the Second World War, but we do get to see inside and out via a permission visit its replacement, and it's a beautiful church. They replaced it well. And while he conducted masses in a chapel established in a house in Paradise Street, and that was in 1892. The house is much older than that, from the 1820s. The diocese purchased land adjacent to St. Joseph's School, now destroyed, which was taken down in the 1970s. And Father Haynes, who we see has a very kindly looking face, oversaw the build of St. Peter and the Guardian Angels Church, for which funding was immediately sought. The church was built through 1902 to 1903 and consecrated and opened for worship in 1903 in memory of Sir Peter Le Page Renouf, 1822 to 1897, who was a convert to the Catholic faith, who finished his career as an Egyptologist, being the curator of Oriental collection at the British Museum, but had previously been one of Her Majesty's inspectors for schools. In his latter role, he had visited the now lost St. Joseph's School frequently, and his wife, Ludovica de Brentano, Lady Ranulph, helped to fund the church due to his connection and in memory of her late husband. The church was built in a style reminiscent of the Romanesque by architect Francis William Tasker, 1848 to 1904. So the architect died just 1 year after this lovely church's creation, and the cost of the build was £6,000. And the little building with the triangular roof was known as the Ark in Rotherhithe, another lost building with all the buildings around it lost as well. And that was founded by our church in the early 1900s as a church mission. And above the door it says, "God is love." You see the kids playing outside, cracking little image, this one. And really this, and you only get a bit of it, is the only image of our church, and this photo dates from the 1930s, from the early 1930s, and shows Paradise Street and its now lost buildings. And you can see the church marked with the arrow with its original roof, which was badly damaged in the Second World War, patched up, and then in more modern times was replaced with a nice slate roof. And St. Joseph's School, which you can see over to the right, all boarded up and ready for demolition in the 1970s. Over to the left, you can see the priest's house, and that's where our church is. And over to the church's right, you can see a now lost pub. And a nice then and now aspect of that, with the school and pub over to the right. And in 2024, you can see from pretty much the same angle, the same view, with all the buildings gone, and a park there now. Hope you all enjoyed this little historical segment, and let's carry back on with our journey, shall we? Well, hope you all enjoyed that one, had its history. Lovely little church. Nice feeling inside as well. And to get us from here to our next location, which is London's longest street, is just a short walk away. So I'll take us back to where we were gonna go. the church was an impromptu one. When I'm not filming in an area, I often have a little scout around and a walk around an area, particularly an area I'm not familiar with. And coming from the north side of the river, I must say Rotherhithe and Bermondsey has been an absolute delight, full of history and lovely people too. Don't like to disdain my own side of the river, but I actually enjoy it more over here. And of course the Leaning Tower of Rotherhithe, we covered that in the previous segment, which was Bermondsey Wall East to London's longest street, Rotherhithe Street. Its history, once frequented by Braithwaites and Thames lightermen collecting their wages. Just pause you a sec. And one of the Mitford sisters, whose husband was connected to Winston Churchill. And the Mitford sisters, well, what an interesting bunch of gals they were. Quite racy and revolutionary for their time. One of them, who was married to the Duke of Devonshire, which I only found out from Sam Tucker the other day. Did a bit of research as well. And it turns out her and her husband were heavily into what was called the dark arts. They knew Aleister Crowley, a weird fellow, and he was voted the wickedest man alive. He's supposed to have summoned the devil, they say. Just over there is the Captain Kidd pub, the Wapping Police Station and Thames River Police headquarters. We'll be covering this area once we've finished Return to Rotherhithe with another series, which I shall call Walking Old Wapping. And there's some cracking little points along the way. Turn this back round quickly, because here you get the view of Tower Bridge and the great dome of St Paul's Cathedral. Known to the Londoners of Samuel Pepys' time as Paul's Church. When the Great Fire of London struck, Paul's Church being one of the greatest stone buildings in London, all the booksellers thought they'd store their books there in safety, but unfortunately they were not safe at all, because the lead on the roof melted and the stones burst, and many a bookseller lost their entire livelihoods stored down in the crypt of Old St Paul's. Samuel Pepys' bookseller, he lost everything, and poor man ended up committing suicide. The monument in London, which was built to commemorate the Great Fire of London, Pirate Riggs a Weedier, the Great Fire of London, sorry, was built to commemorate the Great Fire of London. It wasn't caged, first of all, like it is nowadays, and it was known for people committing suicide, and the first 3 people to jump off of it were 3 people who'd lost everything in the Fire of London. So it seems rather poignant, doesn't it, that the monument to the fire would take the lives of 3 people who'd lost everything to it. They closed it off for a while because there were so many suicides. It's caged now. I've covered it, but because of health conditions I won't be able to do that again. The climb was a bit much. If it's something you're interested in seeing, go to the little magnifying glass that you'll see at the top of my page and type in the monument. It will take you to the video. Same with St Paul's Cathedral, I've covered that. Climbed to the top of the dome. But London Luke's climbing days are over, I'm afraid. unless I'm in reception of a miraculette and get a massive health improvement, but we can but remain hopeful. And here we are, coming up to where we were in our last snippet, Bermondsey Wall East to Rotherhithe Street. And this is Rotherhithe Street. As I said before, it was originally much longer, and I'm talking way back, before the 1700s. But even today, it's still London's longest street, 1.5 miles long, but slum clearances, pre-war, post-war, the war itself, has made the street shorter, and at 1.5 miles it is still the longest street in London. And because of all the changes over the years, it's been renumbered several times. But we'll come to a certain point throughout our tour series where we'll come to where number 242 used to be, and that was an ale house. And I've done a good bit of research on that, and there's a picture that I'll show you. Not in this snippet, it will be in another one, because walking the longest street is in several parts. And the lady standing outside, her name was Margaret Wenlock, but she was known locally and by her customers as Nanny Wenlock. Now, in those days, of course, she may well have been a children's nanny in her youth. Servants in those days were not encouraged to marry, and if they did marry or start courting or dating in modern terms, they lost their place. So she may have been a children's nanny, but nanny was also a term given, particularly in some parts of London, to a woman whose kind of a sideline occupation really was to deliver babies as a non-official midwife before the NHS and official midwives come in, and also to wash and lay out the dead ready for their graves. In Suffolk and places like that, they were known as whiffer women, and in Essex they often were given the title of Goody. And I had a Goody in my family from Essex, Goody Lee, and she was what we would term a whiffer woman, delivered many babies, and I should imagine would have laid out a good few dead as well. And she lived to 87, which in the early 1800s was pretty good going. Anyway, join me for the next video, which will be our start of walking London's longest street. As I said, our church was an impromptu one. For anyone that's new to the page, as I said, I can never resist going past an old church and popping in, although I'm not massively religious. Work that one out if you can. See you on the next video, and I hope you all enjoyed.